Good morning, my friends. Okay, I started a couple minutes early just to let you guys know that I'm here and we're going to do this. So I won't start the information until 7:30 a.m. when we said, so that's like in 3 minutes. But welcome. I see a couple of you are on, and I'm excited to kick off this week. It should be an awesome week. Today I'm doing this, which I know a lot of times I do it on Wednesdays, but this Wednesday I'll be out of town. We're going down to the Bay Area to get or experience one of those scalp spa massages on my head. So I'm really excited about that because, well, my hair kind of has been going through some changes over the last couple of months. And so, number one, I think it's just going to feel incredible. But number two, I am excited to see like they do that like close in, I don't know, video showing you your scalp. By the way, I don't know if that even matters, but it'll be interesting to see. And maybe they give you some insight on your scalp and how to improve scalp health. I don't know. But I will be filming it so that I can share the whole experience with you guys, of course, and should be great. So today, and hopefully everything is sounding good and looking good. I just always want to verify with you. Good morning, Melissa. If you're here, please say good morning and I'll welcome you by name if I know your name, or at least I'll say your handle. And hopefully today we don't have any, crazies that have to be blocked, but you never know. All right, so I have my notes. You guys, I spent so much time on this going down rabbit holes, and hopefully I've been able to put it into a format that will make sense for you guys. But basically today we're going to be talking about leaky gut. And I know so many of you are very familiar with this, and I'm going to explain it and why having a healthy gut is important and how that's probably led to a lot of my autoimmune diseases, and why I'm using BPC157 and TB500 to heal my gut and improve my health. So that's what today's walkie-talkie is going to be about. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Hey, Estella. Let me also just do a little bit of housekeeping before we start. There will be a blog post linked in the description notes, which will be all of my notes. So with the pictures that I'm going to show you and stuff. So if when I'm talking and you feel like, wait, what did she just say? Go to the blog, which will have all of my information in written format for you. So that would help. Welcome, Victoria. Also, I do not share sourcing information on peptides here. I only explain what I'm investigating with them, how they work, or the theory behind them, and what I hope to achieve from them to just help broaden the information. Again, I am not a peptide expert, okay? Like, this is new to me, and essentially every week I choose a new peptide to dig into and explain, and why I think it would work for me, what are the benefits I hope to achieve. And as I go through this process and this journey of experiencing peptides, using them, understanding them more fully, I hope that that kind of helps you go on this journey as well, helps you ask questions, helps you dive into research if peptides are interesting to you. It's a wild, wild world of peptides, and they are exploding in the US market, and for good reason. They're super powerful, super effective, do not have the side effects of manufactured drugs that either make you dependent, force your cell to do something, all of the above, and create side effects. So hopefully that catches you up really quickly. And essentially all a peptide is a short amino acid chain that is a signaling agent. And the goal of peptide use is to optimize your cells. And as we age, we know our cells get older, they become less optimized, and we basically have systemic issues throughout our body. So in turning back the clock, if we can improve cellular turnover, but also optimize our cells so they do their processes more effectively, more efficiently, we will age better. But number one, we will feel better. And all of this is for me to feel better. Good morning, Tori. Okay, and with that, let's get into it. Let's see if I don't fall off the treadmill today while doing my notes. Okay, so leaky gut or intestinal permeability. Okay, so that's what we're going to do a deep dive into. And as usual, I have imagery to help make all of this make sense. So leaky gut is just the syndrome where the intestinal condition in which weakening of the intestinal walls allows bacteria and toxins into the bloodstream. So a lot of people would always be like, leaky gut, and I'd be like, I don't understand. And then they'd be like, yeah, it's just like particles flowing into your body. And you'd be like, so like, are there a bunch of holes in my intestines? Like, how is that happening? And why is that a problem? So our intestinal lining, specifically our small intestine, is where we take in nutrition and we fight back bacteria that can be in there, okay? And, but when we have leaky gut, apparently, the idea is that when you're taking in nutrition, the junctions between those cells, and I'll explain that, get compromised, and you take in more than just nutrition. You take in toxins, bacteria, things that inflame your immune system and essentially inflame your GI tract or that small intestine area that we have. Okay, so the gut lumen. So if you've never looked at the anatomy of, and this is in particular the small intestine, you can see, so that's like a cross cut. So the gut lumen is just the hole that all of our food flows down, okay? So we put something into our mouth, it goes into our stomach, the acids in our stomach start the breakdown, and then it flows into our small intestine, and that's where we actually absorb nutrition. But unfortunately, if you have leaky gut or your intestines are inflamed, you can absorb more than just nutrition. And furthermore, when they are compromised in this way, you're not actually getting the nutritional uptake that you think you are. So it's just a host of problems. So, okay. So the mucosa is the innermost wall in our tube, in our intestine, okay? So you have like 4 different layers on your intestine. You have the center one, the mucosa, which is the one that we're mostly focused on because that's where we get disruption. Beyond that, you have different layers of muscle and nerve and blood vessels that basically help your small intestine contract and, you know, thrive. The blood, the nutrition to take. You have the blood vessels because when they absorb the nutrition, now they can take it throughout the body. You have these layers of muscle that help contract and release to help the flow of the food as it's being absorbed into your body. All right. I made you guys the special one. Oh, I was going to bring my scrubby brush. I totally forgot. I thought this would make a lot of sense to you guys. Okay, so we have this epithelial cell layer, and that's this layer right in here. Again, these pictures will be on the blog if you want to look at them like more closely. But this first layer that all of our food is hitting has this single layer of cells that line it. And all these cells have these little fingers at the top for having more surface area to absorb nutrition and make mucus. Okay, so okay, so I likened it to a silicone scrubbing brush, and you probably can't see that very well in this picture, but essentially when I was thinking about the epithelial cell wall with its little fingers, I was thinking oh, that's just like a facial scrubbing silicone brush that that we use on our faces. So I think about my lining in that idea with these little fingers as my food is traveling down it. And we want these little fingers or villi to be healthy because along these entire pathways, that's where they're absorbing in nutrition and also secreting mucus. And they are a single cell line, not because the body can't make more of them, but because we need it to be single cell to allow the permeability of nutrition. So there's only one layer of cells, and if those get compromised, you get this idea of leaky gut, where more things can pass through than would be normal if you had nice, tight cell junctions, right? Okay, so the first defense for these epithelial cells that are sticking up in our intestinal wall, basically bringing in nutrition, is a mucosal lining, mucus. They secrete mucus, like you guys are familiar with mucus, gel, and that helps them protect themselves from microbes, toxins, all of the things that we put into our mouth that are accompanying our food into our system. This gel layer on top of our little villi are what is its first line of defense against basically being broken down. Good morning, Melanie, Michelle, Ryan. How are you guys? Okay. Oh, excuse me, I need some water. Okay. So the mucus is really important because it's protecting the epithelium from bacteria by promoting their clearance, thereby inhibiting inflammation, and infection. So maintaining the balance of the bacteria and the yeast in this mucus that sits above our little villi is super important, and that's why people take probiotics, especially after you've had a dose or a cycle with antibiotics, because antibiotics basically kill all of the good bacteria that are found in your intestines, or most of it typically, depending on the antibiotic you're using. So that can really break down that mucus lining or layer that's sitting on top of your villi, because the whole microbiome becomes disrupted. And bacteria is great in your system. The whole point is maintaining the homeostasis so that we have a nice thick mucus, which protects the villi and basically keeps everything moving, right? I love a good gut flora conversation. Yes. Oh, you love this topic, Michelle? Okay, good. Okay. So obviously, because the villi are the ones that make mucus, they secrete it, it's important that they not get messed up or damaged, right? Because we want them efficiently making the mucus. Okay, this is a good picture for you guys. So again, here you can see that we have our epithelial cells in a single line. You can see the mucus above it. You can see like bacteria and microorganisms and all of these things that kind of sit in that mucus. And some are dispelled because we have the right homeostasis in the biome. And that's great. That's how it's supposed to work. If you're eating a lot of sugar, a lot of gluten, a lot of processed foods, this can build up the yeast factor. That's the reason a meat-only diet can be super effective at rebalancing your biome, because body loves meat. Meat doesn't have these byproducts of yeast and different things that are going to basically shift the balance of our mucus. So below this single layer of epithelial cells. So we've got our mucus, we've got our epithelial cells, and you can see that between them, there are these little junctions. And there's about 4 junctions between them all. And I don't deep dive into the junctions for reasons that, number one, it would take a real long time. And number two, I don't know if that would be as helpful right now. But basically, you have different layers of gates that the nutrition and the bacteria need to pass through if they're being absorbed down. And what they're absorbed down into is the lumina propria. And basically, this is just a really thin layer of immune system cells. There's like fibroblasts in there and blood vessels and a lot of these cells that fight infection. Ryan says, good guy health is so important for good mental health. Oh, good gut health. Yeah, mental health. Sometimes like 80% of our serotonin is produced in our colon. Yes. And we are going to get to that and how this whole thing affects our brain besides being able to go to the bathroom and a million other things, right? Okay. Okay, here's a better picture of the junctions. So you can see these different gateways between the cells and how they kind of perform to open up and accept in the nutrition that they need. So when basically the nutrition passes through our epithelial cells through these different gates, it goes into that lower area where we have, again, fibroblasts and immune cells and blood vessels. And so when bacteria or toxins also pass down with the food, because essentially our mucus has been disturbed and it's breaking down the epithelial junctions, it creates inflammation. So we have immune cells down there. All of a sudden, bacteria or toxins are getting in there. It's disrupting the system, and our immune system goes to work. And that's the reason, because remember, it's a hose. So if this is happening all along your hose, your entire intestines will become inflamed by this inflammation that goes on right below that epithelial cell wall, because stuff that's not supposed to be there is getting in and is disrupting that environment. Oh, Claudia's like, oh yeah, I made it to this live. Yay, I'm so glad. Okay, so basically without a nice thick mucus layer, our system for bringing in nutrition is completely compromised and our system is not efficient, it's not optimized, and it leads to a whole host of problems. There is a molecule called zonulin, and it's responsible for opening up the gaps between the neighboring epithelial cells. So again, we have these gateways, and zonulin is apparently the molecule that they see present when these open up and allow in nutrition and also bacteria. So under certain conditions, there's too much zonulin produced, right? And when that happens, too much of what we don't want is getting into our bloodstream. So why does the inflammation occur in the GI tract? Kind of went over this already, but here's a great example of a cross section. So epithelial cells, and then this is the lumina propria, the area where we have immune cells, fibroblasts, and blood vessels. So it's a level of like connective tissue, which is why you find fibroblasts in there. And this thin layer of tissue consists of long, thin supporting cells called fibroblasts. The fibroblasts are surrounded by small blood vessels and a variety of inflammatory cells that protect the body from microbes that may enter the body through the surface tissue. And in this case, we're talking about the epithelial cells. Your body has epithelial cells in lots of other places too, by the way. So we have them in our GI tract, specifically in the small intestine, because we need to absorb in nutrition. We have them in our mouths and down our throat, also because there is nutrition that is being absorbed in. That's also why you find a lot of mucus in these areas. You find mucus in your throat because wherever you have a layer of cells that is open to the environment, we have a mucosal layer to, again, be that first shield against invaders that we don't want entering our body. Our skin does not have a mucosal layer. Instead, our skin, and it doesn't have epithelial cells. Instead, our skin has the dermis and the epidermis, or the epidermis, the dermis, and those are thick protective layers to the environment. So even though our skin is obviously subject to the world, it's a different system for products penetrating, which is also why skincare topicals, they kind of sit on the skin and they're harder to absorb in based on their molecular weight because we have such a thick defense against anything penetrating when it comes to our skin. Inside of our bodies, it's different. So we have these epithelial cells with these little fingers, and on top of them, we have that mucus layer. And I know I keep repeating myself, but I'm just trying to make sure that this is making sense. And I'm hitting this like mucus concept really hard because I think it's super important. Oh, and if you're here, welcome, and make sure to hit that like button. And if you think this information is helpful, please share it with your friends. Okay, so let's see. Okay, on to the next page. Okay, so this is a great diagram of how when bacteria enters in through these broke down epithelial cells, that and how they trigger inflammation. And again, this will be on the website, on the blog post linked, which will give you a better ability to look at it. Because I know as I'm walking, it's kind of hard to see. But you've got the villi, right? And this is how they absorb nutrition through our little single cell walls. And here's an example of it being normal and in homeostasis. And even though some bacteria is normal to get in, that's the reason we have this immune system right there. But the immune system can't be overloaded, otherwise it causes inflammation. So it's not that bacteria can't ever pass through. It does. That's the whole point of having this layer of basically an immune system right below it. The problem is when we overload it, we break down the homeostasis of this cycle that we want to keep in check. And then what ends up happening is we get this. And it's like chaos. It's breaking down the epithelial cells from below. So not only are the junctions getting widened, you actually lose epithelial cells in these areas of contamination. And apparently it becomes like a cyclical effect that's hard to get out, because once your microbiome, once that mucus is compromised, once there's breakdown of the epithelial cells, now all of a sudden the bacteria is just flowing through this opening. That's why they say intestinal permeability. That's why they say essentially holes in your gut lining, because you get these areas where the epithelial cells have been so compromised that now it's just a floodgate of anything through it. But the problem is not necessarily a floodgate for nutrition, because now the nutrition isn't really being recognized by these little receptors on the end of our villi. So it's not being absorbed correctly. And a lot of nutrition is just passing by. But the bacteria and the toxins, they want in. And then that builds up this massive sense of inflammation that really is hard to stop once it starts. It's like a domino effect. And then you'll continue, just like losing teeth, you'll continue losing epithelial cells. as this inflammation continues to grow, because underneath it, that's where they're triggered to renew themselves. And they renew like every 5 days, which is amazing. But the problem is they're not going to renew in these areas where you have this massive disruption. Okay, Claudia says, yes, makes a lot of sense. One of the world says yes. Okay. S. Diamond says, thank you for this information. I'm learning a lot. Oh, good. I'm glad. Okay. Okay. So again, as that inflammation builds, we get epithelial death. I really like finding models of these processes because it helps me mentally visualize it. So that's the reason I include so many pictures, because biochemistry can elude us. But once we can see it and understand it, I feel like our bodies make a lot more sense. And that's how it's been for me. My body just seems like it's making a lot more sense as I do these deep dives into how the biochemistry actually works in our bodies. Again, this picture will be on the blog, but essentially they're just showing different sensors and different processes of how these chain reactions happen along the villi. Villi being fingers of the epithelial cells. So now we understand this whole idea, and I'm sure all of you already knew, but this idea of leaky gut just basically goes to this concept that our intestinal walls are compromised and the epithelial cells are not optimized, they're dysfunctional, they're breaking down, and that is causing inflammation throughout our entire GI tract. So what causes leaky gut? If you're familiar with leaky gut, then you might be familiar with the fact that food causes leaky gut, infections of the gut, or taking antibiotics or just toxins from the world that we're ingesting can cause leaky gut. And then stress also. So you might be eating amazing. You don't touch gluten. You have very low sugar. You're high protein. You take probiotics, do all these things. But if your stress is super high, that will also cause this epithelial dysfunction and inflammation in your GI tract, which I think is really critical because I think so many people are like, yeah, I know about leaky gut. I know what to eat. I know how to protect myself. But if your stress is like through the roof, you can still have the symptoms of leaky gut. You can still have epithelial breakdown. And what are some signs of leaky gut? It's not just bathroom. I know many of us think, well, I don't have irritable bowel syndrome, so I don't have leaky gut. Or I don't have Crohn's disease, so I don't have leaky gut. You know, like there are a lot of symptoms of leaky gut that you might not necessarily recognize. Michelle says Roundup, also called glycinate, I believe, causes all sorts of damage and leaky gut. Yeah, and I think look, leaky gut is not recognized right now as a disease or a condition. I don't know why. Hopefully that will change. I'm not sure if it's that they can't really pinpoint what exactly is going on, but anecdotally, everybody's like, I feel like crap. I can't go to the bathroom. I can't lose weight. I have brain fog. I have all these issues. I feel inflamed. And, you know, you can trace it apparently back to the gut, but for some reason right now, for whatever reason, it's not recognized as a disease or syndrome to fix. However, a lot of functional medicine and a lot of doctors who are just more with it and progressive are looking at people's markers in their gut, trying to understand what could be hindering their health. Michelle says it's the stuff they put on so much of grain and products. Yes, which is one of the reasons staying away from grain can be highly beneficial to your gut flora and biome. Claudia says, is leaky gut determined solely by symptoms or their test. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I did just order a test and I'm going to get into that. Are you working out to get a boyfriend? Well, I have 4 kids and a husband of 16 years. So no, I'm working out so that I can live longer and be a healthier person and have a better attitude. And working out for me is making me feel better. But for a long time, I couldn't really work out because I was so sick and lethargic and had no energy to just do work, let alone do anything like this. So anyways, no, not for a boyfriend, just for me, so I can be a better mom and a better spouse. Okay, so some of the like common symptoms, if you have leaky gut, are food sensitivities, mood issues, ding, 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 thyroid issues, ding, 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 irritable bowel syndrome. I believe I have a form of IBS, and I'll get into that later. Malabsorption of nutrition. Well, I don't know if I was not absorbing nutrition correctly, but I would reason that because of all my other symptoms, yes, I probably have poor absorption of nutrition. Autoimmune diseases, ding, ding, ding. Inflammatory skin disorders. Okay, I don't know if I notice inflammatory skin issues, but that doesn't mean that they're not on their way, or that doesn't mean that maybe I've done a lot to help aid my skin from maybe all of the side effects of leaky gut. And then difficulty losing weight. Ding, ding, ding. Yes. Okay, so those are just a top 8 of the issues that can be present. And this is the reason I think I have leaky gut. So number 1, my entire life, I've never had regular bowel movements. In fact, I'm completely acclimated to this condition of not going to the bathroom daily or even every other day. So when I went on semaglutide, as many of you guys know, a lot of people complain about those GLP-1 agonists as like stalling digestion, making them feel gross because they can't go to the bathroom. This is a true side effect of the GLP-1s, semaglutide, tirzepatide, liraglutide, because they help you feel satiated. And one way in doing that is they slow down your GI tract. So a lot of people who might be regular but go on one of these weight loss peptides, they complain. They complain that they don't like it because primarily their GI tract is slowed down. Okay, well for me, you guys, I never even noticed. Didn't bother me because it was just part of my regular life. By the time I was 41 and using it, I was completely acclimated to this idea that I don't go to the bathroom. So it wasn't a side effect for me. I had acclimated to being able to use a GLP-1. Okay. So number 2. So reason number 2, I think I have. So reason number 1, I think I have leaky gut is because I am not regular. Number 2, and I never have been my entire life. And number 2, the reason I think I have leaky gut is because in my 20s, I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, which is an autoimmune disease. And if you don't know what that is, so you're in your colon, you get ulcers. And basically, I would have this incredible urge to constantly push, and it would just be a mucus lining, like a mucus substance, sometimes with blood, that would come out. Sometimes I would bleed more than others, but it's exhausting. The power that I would exert on myself to push nothing out, but I had this need, like when you go into labor and it doesn't matter, like you have to push as hard as possible. Like you can't stop it, you have to. And I was doing triathlon at this time, so I thought I was healthy, like I won my first triathlon, in fact. So it's not like I thought I was unhealthy, but perhaps the stress and everything, I don't know, it induced this ulcerative colitis, and it was really, really hard because I needed to be on my bike like 6 hours in a day, and I couldn't ride, and I needed to go to the bathroom all the time. I didn't want to go anywhere because I didn't want to be away from the bathroom. So anyways, crazy, but I got diagnosed with it after they did a scan, a colonoscopy, put me on steroids, and immediately it was resolved. And it hasn't come back, that need. So it definitely calmed down the inflammation and the ulcers that were going on inside my colon. But what led to this? Well, autoimmune diseases seem to be linked to higher up in the chain, the small intestine, where we're getting that permeability or that epithelial breakdown. So were they connected? Did I already have leaky gut in my 20s? I assume so. This is all anecdotal, of course, and this is me piecing it together later on in life, making sense of it. But I would say that somehow that definitely probably contributed to my ulcerative colitis. Okay, so number 3, I've always had a hard time keeping weight off. It didn't matter how strict I was on food. It didn't matter how hard I was killing myself at the gym, how many sports I played in high school. The only way I could really ever maintain weight was through restriction, and I mean not eating. Okay, and I'm not an anorexic, but I would be very restrictive with how often I ate to be able to just maintain weight, not like drop weight, not even get into the best shape of my life, just basically be able to stabilize my weight. And all of this stress, all of this mental stress, all of this physical stress that I put on my body was probably, again, exacerbating whatever the situation was inside my small intestine. Okay. I do suffer from unstable moods, and I have used psych meds in the past to help during severe moments in life. So there have been triggers in my life that have sent me over the edge, and so I've gone on psych meds for, my mood. This again can tie back, like Ryan said earlier, to our GI tract. And I'll explain that in a minute on why. Tyler says, I'm so glad you got the diagnosis. I know how hard that is. Oh, you guys, I know some people don't want to be diagnosed with diseases, but I'm telling you, it was the greatest blessing for me, because otherwise I was just roaming the earth, so confused on why my body behaved differently than other people, so confused on why I felt so tired, and I felt like I could barely do anything anymore. So getting the Hashimoto's diagnosis was an incredible gift for me. Okay, and so then to follow up with that, in January 2024, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's, so just a couple months ago, and which is an autoimmune disorder that destroys the thyroid. So I've had 2 autoimmune disorders or diseases. I have severe mood up and down concepts, and can't keep weight off, and my digestion has always been slow my entire life. And the development of autoimmune disorders has been linked to the GI tract because of the immune response. Remember, again, that immune response that is displayed in that lumina propria layer. And so as the inflammation in the GI tract continues to go up, it leads to systemic issues all over the body. And this is because of the gut-brain axis. So there is this connection now that they've been able to identify called the gut-brain axis. And basically what it explains is that an unbalanced microbiome in your small intestine leads to inflammatory and leaky gut, which slows the production of neurotransmitters. So in our gut, as we're taking in nutrition, there are signaling agents through a nerve, and that connects to our brain, telling us, hey, you're full, or you're hungry, or something doesn't feel right in the stomach, right? We sense our stomach a lot of times because of this connection. So as the inflammation builds in our intestinal walls, we start getting misfirings. We start, like, the whole system of communication greatly breaks down. And now you feel sad, depressed, angry, moody, anxiety, all of the above. It can create depression, anxiety, insomnia, fatigue, brain fog, memory issues, confusion, and then neurodegenerative diseases. And again, this picture with this information will be on the blog post, which will be linked in the description of this live. So the gut-brain axis consists of biodirectional communication between the central and the internal nervous or enteric nervous system, linking emotional and cognitive centers of the brain with peripheral intestinal functions. Again, telling us we're hungry, telling us we're full. All of these things are really important between our brain and our stomach. So recent advances in research have described the importance of gut microbiota in influencing these interactions, meaning that, again, remember that mucus layer on top of our little villi fingers, that single cell epithelial wall? We want that mucus layer to be balanced with the right amount of bacteria and the right amount of yeast so that it's happy and that it stays thick so that it doesn't break down our epithelial cells. Viola says having the label helps know what to target, research, and apply. Thanks for helping us understand. Oh, yes, of course. You guys, this is how I learn. So I do this for myself, and then I share it with you guys because I hope that in me doing this, it can aid you in understanding. Again, that doesn't mean that I know everything, and that doesn't mean that me talking on this is the full research dive or that there's not so much more information to share. Hi, Alicia and Julie. Welcome, you guys. Okay, so besides many of the physical symptoms of leaky gut, I do also have anxiety, insomnia, fatigue, and brain fog. I imagine so this is my concern. I imagine that if I don't get this under control that's been going on my entire life, that I will end up with neurodegenerative diseases because the pathways are so messed up, and it will, again, cascade into probably dementia and other neurological issues that eventuate into the brain. So that's the reason I'm like so motivated to like do anything I can to solve this problem. And if you are experiencing things like me, then you should be as motivated to do whatever you can to get this resolved, because it's not just a bathroom thing, it's an overall health thing, and you will have a better mood, clearer brain, longer life expectancy if you can get this under control. So we destroy our intestinal biome with diet, stress, antibiotics. Oh, okay, this is what I thought was interesting. But some of us are more susceptible to leaky gut or this breakdown, this permeability of our intestinal lining. Some people have a genetic makeup where they can be really hard on their systems and their systems still stay pretty balanced and they don't have as much leaky gut or permeability as some of us do. But as I've researched this, one second, I realized that I must have a genetic marker or some kind of genetic susceptibility to developing this more than the regular person. And that is because my mom, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother all complained about bathroom issues. And on top of it, they all had to take psych meds. And on top of it, my great-grandmother was institutionalized and her mother before her was institutionalized. So I think there is a strong genetic issue in my lineage and family that predisposes us to having a harder time with our intestinal lining. And if you have a long history of people in your life that have probably had a lot of mental disorders, needed to be on psych meds, maybe institutionalized, that you could maybe also share in this genetic makeup that might be really crippling your intestinal lining. These are just my thoughts on it. That doesn't mean that it's 100% true. I'm just explaining to you what I've researched and what I see in my family history and what I've observed. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so going back to somebody asking me about testing. So over the weekend, as I was doing research into this, I realized that there are markers to test for leaky gut and to try to like watch it, right? So I ordered a test from Biome. It's called the Gut Intelligence Test. And it's going to test for 20 different things, like to help me understand my gut. It's going to tell me 300 foods that are not good for me specifically. It's a stool sample. Now, I was looking for a blood test rather than a stool sample test. And maybe there is one out there, but after spending like an hour looking for an at-home blood test, I just gave up and decided to do this stool one. The reason I was thinking I would prefer to do a blood test versus a stool test, and look, I can probably have a doctor order a specific blood test. And when I go back to my testosterone hormone replacement doctor, I'm going to ask him for a specific blood test for this. And one of the reasons I thought blood would be better than stool is because I was watching one YouTube video where the guy was explaining leaky gut, which was very helpful, and also the markers you can follow to see if you're improving your gut or what's really going on. And one of the things is zonulin. Oh, did I skip zonulin? I thought we explained that. Okay, if I skip zonulin, then I apologize. But zonulin is a molecule that opens those tight junctions, allowing the nutrition through. And when zonulin is really high, they believe that you have really high permeability because the zonulin is so present in your blood and in your stool that you want to see those zonulin numbers come down. Well, this guy that I was watching on YouTube said, because there's a lot of stool tests out there, obviously, because that's when I was like, where are the blood tests for zonulin? He said that although he doesn't think that the stool tests for watching zonulin are accurate because they would do blood tests for zonulin versus stool tests. And for instance, they would see zonulin go down in the blood, and yet the stool wasn't representing that same change. So I share that with you because all of these tests at home take stool. And I decided to do this test just to start something, but also I think that what it will tell me specifically about my microbiome, as far as like what bacteria I'm missing, there's a lot of bacteria strands, and we want a variety of them in particular. And so maybe I'm high in one bacteria strand, but I need all these other ones. So this stool test does identify the biome and what the candida, yeast versus bacteria ratio is. And then they tell you, hey, you need more of this bacteria. So I don't feel like this test is going to be a complete waste. Plus, I'm interested to see what food markers it says to avoid. I can already expect to see like gluten and things like that, but it'll be interesting to see what other polysaccharides and things like that. It's like, don't eat these. But as far as watching the zonulin, I think that we'll start with the stool test, but I want to do regular blood work on the zonulin to see that marker truly go down or change. So that's the reason I'm doing the stool test. But for really watching the tight junction action, I want to be able to monitor the zonulin in blood. Yeah, these tests. So over the weekend, I got $100 off this gut intelligence test, and it's normally like $350. This one, I mean, you can check a lot of sites. I didn't spend that much time. I kind of thought the Biome one looked interesting, plus it like has an app for tracking things. So I don't know. I just bit the bullet and did that one because I saw the $100 off and I was like, okay, I'll do this one. And I don't know when they're going to ship it, hopefully this week. And then once I send it back to them, it takes 2 to 3 weeks to get my results. So it'll be like a month until I probably know what's going on. And it would have been amazing to do this back in January when I thought I was going to die, because already things are improving, obviously. But again, I just want to start watching it wherever I can. And maybe I've already improved it tremendously, but again, I just want the information. And this stool test will give me a lot of other information besides the zonulin, so I think that'll be helpful. Okay, so we hopefully, at this point, we understand the leaky gut, intestinal permeability concept, why it builds inflammation, how that inflammation not only affects nutrition absorption and irritable bowel, but also affects our brains, our minds, and systemically everything, okay? That was my goal with this. And if you knew all this information, I apologize for, taking you through it again. But the whole point of that was to get us to now, the peptides I'm using, why I think in my mind and from research that they might aid in my gut health. Welcome, Nay. Welcome, Sarah. Okay. So so when I found out about that I had Hashimoto's, I knew immediately to cut out gluten. And I never ate a ton of gluten prior because things with gluten make you fat. So I don't eat a lot of gluten, but now I'm even more strict on myself to just avoid gluten. So like when we go out, even if I'm having something that might not be carnivore or even keto, I make sure that it's doesn't have any gluten in it. Now, the other night we did go to dumplings and we were eating with other people. So, and it's like shared plates. So I didn't want to mess that up for everyone else who was trying to enjoy their dinner. So I did eat some more gluten that night than normal. But I think because of all of the work I've been doing to help my biome already, the gluten didn't impact me as much as it may have previously. And there is something to be said for that. So once you get your biome and that gel mucus restored, you can introduce things again. You can have gluten here and there. All of these things you can have sparingly once you get your biome corrected. But the problem is when your biome is dysfunctional, you have to cut it all out so that it can heal. And then if you decide to add it back in on the occasional party or holiday, that's fine. Just, it can't be every day. It can't be all the time, because these are aggressors to that biome and they aid in breaking down your epithelial cell. Good morning, Amelia. Okay. So I specifically for my gut started using BPC157 and TB500. Those are 2 peptides, okay? And I do inject those. Now you can take BPC157 orally, and I believe you can take T4 or TB4 or TB500 orally as well. Initially, okay, we'll get into them and I'll explain some new information that I recently understood better so that it can aid you. So what is BPC? It's the body protective compound, you guys. So I mean, right there it's saying what I do is I protect your body. BPC, body protecting compound. And at 157 is because it's 15 amino acids in the chain. And I believe 7 is for where it binds or where it's kind of found in the genome. I'm not exactly sure what the 7 is, but I heard one doctor kind of explain it that way. So anyways, but just know it's a 15 amino acid and it is the body protecting compound. That's what BPC stands for. Okay. It is found in our gastric juices. So what makes BPC 157 unlike all other peptides is you can imagine if you take them orally, so many peptides can't make it through your gastric juice in your stomach when everything's getting broken down. They're just dismantled and destroyed. So the bioavailability of most peptides orally is not great, which is why you either have to take a ton to get the same impact or people inject. But with BPC157 coming from the gastric juices already, it is built to be able to go through your entire system, not lose its efficacy. And then by the time it gets to your small intestine, it can release in there, healing your small intestine, fixing the epithelial, the life fingers, and helping restore that mucus lining. Tracy says, I found out I have low stomach bile from taking Tums, and as you age, it gets worse. Take care of your gut and use digestive enzymes in your protocol. I love it, Tracy. Mixed often says there's no research to say injecting peptides is either good or bad. Well, you mean like are you meaning that there's like no side effect? Well, number one, I'll tell you as a personal person, an individual who has been injecting peptides, I'll tell you there is a massive good effect for me. I mean, it's night and day. So I'm not sure. When people say there's no research, what, because the FDA didn't like stamp their approval on some sheet of paper that was done by Eli Lilly so that they can sell a really expensive pharmaceutical drug now and take something that's been around for the last 100 years that is actually really well documented with a ton of clinical data from Russia and Bulgaria because they've been using them for 100 years. So be careful when you say things like that because it's actually not true. There is a lot of clinical data. And just because pharmaceutical companies haven't gone after making a profit on peptides yet, doesn't mean that peptides aren't powerful, effective, and widely used. In fact, the whole reason peptides have finally become so valued and grown so large in the United States specifically is because of orthopedic surgeons. Because orthopedic surgeons are doing bone healing, they're reattaching tendons, and they're reattaching skeletal muscle. And they use these peptides all the time, directly injected into a shoulder injury, into a knee injury, to rebuild and expedite the healing. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So because, okay, I'll say this about BPC157. It was basically discovered in the early 90s, and they started doing testing with it in 93. But because it is such a massive peptide that seems to affect a lot of things beneficially, that's the reason they called it the body protecting compound. I've yet to be able to find a great schematic on how it actually functions on the receptor and how that chain reaction happens in the body. A lot of other peptides are much easier to follow the sequence of how they work. But when it comes to BPC157, it's widely used for healing, and they know that it builds the mucus lining. So the reason, as we went through with leaky gut and how it works or what it does, the whole reason I got into using BPC157 is specifically for its ability to build up the mucosal lining. How it does that, I've yet to find a great illustration of it, but I'm going to keep looking. People say in research that they know it works, they just don't know exactly how it works. Thanks, Michelle. Nay says, wow, I wish I would have known about all of this. Last year, my husband had a full tear of his patella tendon. I know, nay. And that's one of the reasons. So 2 years ago, before I ever went on semaglutide or anything, my husband tore his bicep and his tricep like 6 months apart from each other and had to have them reattached. He could not get any activation. He couldn't do tricep push downs. He couldn't do curls. He just couldn't get any activation. And his entire arm atrophied. It's like half the size of his other arm because he couldn't get it to work. And so he kind of went on forums, and all the bros, the gym bros who used to use steroids, all switched to using peptides because peptides don't have side effects and they're just really well tolerated in the body and effective. So he was the one who got into doing the BPC and the TB500 and the CJC1295 because he was trying to get these connections to actually fire and work. And if you've ever had, like Nay's saying, like the patella tendon or things like this, they can reattach it, but there's something problematic about it actually working again. So Jason's arm has been getting tremendously better now that he's been injecting the peptides. And there's a lot of orthopedic clinical studies, and orthopedists are using this, surgeons, because they see the massive effects on how they heal these specific issues. Sorry, let me get to this. Oh no. Wait says, I know this is off subject and I don't know anything you're talking about, not even one, but what's a good way to get a low resting heart rate? I don't know. That's not on the top of my mind right now. Michelle says, make the most generous assumption when you make comments like no research comment, but I think you responded beautifully. Perhaps mixed onions was saying there's no research and this is super helpful. Oh yeah, I mean, if that was, you guys, let me just back up really quick and say sometimes it's really hard for me to know the tone, the subject matter, and the point of comments when I try to read them, because a lot of people don't even put the subject matter in their comment. They just like say something and I don't even know what they're referring to. Or if they've written a bunch of comments and I just catch one of their comments, I can't see the whole context. So just understand that if I respond to you in a way that is not how you meant, forgive me, because it's really hard for me to make sense of sometimes what you guys write. I'm 41, about to turn 42. Okay, Nate says his leg muscles are still smaller than his other one. Yep. Okay, love it, Michelle. Okay, I'm going to answer that. Michelle asked, is BPC157 oral or injectable? It's both, and I'm going to tell you more on that in a minute. But basically, because BPC157 influences the epithelium, which helps it create more mucus, it's helped the following: ulcerative colitis, and I wish I would have known about this 20 years ago when I was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, and inflammatory bowel disease. And in fact, my understanding is that in Bulgaria or Russia, I'm not sure, I get them confused because there's a lot of data and clinical studies that come out of those two countries with specifically to peptides. But one right now has the first human study, long-term, 5 years, of specifically using BPC157 to cure ulcerative colitis. And I believe that study is about to wrap up. And apparently they've shown just incredible results with helping in that disorder. And because, again, BPC157 is derived from our gastric juices, it is stable in the body through the stomach. So right now, so what I realized is that I've been injecting it for, I believe, the last 2 weeks. And I feel like already I'm having more consistent bowel movements. I'm not feeling as tight or bloated in my stomach. And my mood is drastically improving. Now, there are other things that I'm doing, other peptides that also help with this, but I would say already the injections of the BPC157, I'm already noticing the benefits. Now, I thought that the best way in particular to heal my gut was to inject BPC157. And if you have a shoulder injury, for instance, or a groin tear like I do, it's really beneficial to inject BPC157 just directly into those ailing spots, okay? But if you are looking at BPC157 in particular to heal your gut, like I am, then actually you might enjoy this better oral, because not everybody wants to inject. And the special thing about BPC157 is that I think it actually might work even better taken orally, because it goes down through your stomach, it doesn't degrade in your gastric juices, and then once it hits your small intestine walls, it just helps build back that mucosal lining. So actually, I did just order a container, pill vial of BPC157. It's a 500 milligram per dose. I got it off Amazon. I do link to it in the description. And I'm going to start taking that daily because I feel like it'll be like a 1-2 punch. So as I'm injecting 157, it's going to do a systemic rebuilding and protection of my body. But as I'm taking it orally, I think it's really going to jumpstart that whole mucosal layer in my stomach, in my small intestine, to really help protect and build up my epithelial cells so that I get better absorption. My homeostasis in my mucosal lining is protected. And anyways, so I know a lot of us don't want to inject. We don't feel comfortable with that. We don't know where to source it, all of that stuff. But you can buy a oral BP157, 500 milligram. And the different doctors that I've watched, they all say the 500 milligram a day dose is perfect. So there was another one that was 1,000 milligrams, and I chose to buy the 500 milligram because I didn't want to be wasteful. They're expensive, so you don't want to like waste them. Okay, you guys like this? Good. How are you typing and doing this at the same time? I'm not typing. I'm reading my notes. I'm just trying to read your comments. Okay. So the other one that we're covering today is TB500. That's the other peptide. I use them together. Okay. I actually got them in a blend, which you watched last week's WALKIE-TALKIE on CJC 1295 with Inflammatory. I really wish I hadn't bought them in the blend. I wish I had bought them individually so that I could monitor dose better. So I just reordered and I bought them as singles. And with this one, I don't know if it's as problematic to have the blend, but again, you can get them separated out as well. So what is TB500? So there's another name for TB500, which is Thymosin beta 4, so TB4. And TB4 is found in every cell of your body. It is found in higher amounts at injury sites as it promotes healing. And TB4 or TB500 has been well documented and utilized for a long time. Okay, this isn't a new one. It was found before BPC157, and it's pretty amazing. So it promotes healing. So also I want to bring this to the forefront. TB4 is not identical to TB500. So for instance, I'm using TB500, and I'll explain that a little bit more. TB4 is made up of 43 amino acids, okay? TB500 has only 7 amino acids. So it's considered a fragment. And what's been happening is as researchers are identifying these different peptides and how they work, they're actually able to dive deeper and see, okay, so which amino acid sections of this peptide are actually hitting on that signaling agent. So TB500 is only 7 amino acids taken from TB4, which is 47 amino acids. And it is really powerful at targeting inflammation. So it's a fragment peptide. So it's not bioidentical to TB4 because it's shortened, but it's a little bit more powerful at reducing inflammation than the standard TB500, standard TB4. TB4 also is great, and it has like a more whole body approach where it does a couple different things. The TB500 is specific to targeting the sensor for inflammation and reducing it, which is why TB500 is used so much in pain management after surgery, because it reduces the inflammation. And you guys, I wish I knew all of this stuff last year when I was having the mommy makeover. Besides whatever pills they gave me to help stay off the pain, which they did not give me very good ones, I wish I had had my peptides, because I would have just been using those daily to help with my recovery, the inflammation, the wound healing. Highly recommend these peptides for surgery recovery. You don't have to be having bone surgery or reattachment of a ligament to benefit from these peptides. Okay, it's so good to see you guys. Welcome. Okay, sorry, I need to get my new water jug. I had my tea in this one with my collagen, and now I have my water with my hair vitamins. Okay, so now we understand kind of the difference between TB4 and TB500, and you'll see TB500 a lot on peptide sites. Okay. Okay, so after a lot of research has been done conducting experiments on animal models, it was suggested that thiomycin beta-4, TB4, may play a significant part in regulating the structure of cells. TB4 works by binding to actin for cell mobility. It is responsible for building the matrix or cytoskeleton that we need for cell growth. So I thought this was really interesting. And they had some pictures of this showing a control. There was like the cell membrane and just like a little bit of cellular mobility to create tissue. And then they showed a cell where they had TB4 in the study, and you could just see this massive matrix of scaffolding coming out. And the reason the scaffolding, specifically in wound healing, is so important is because when TB4 is present, it basically tells the stem cells they need to activate, they need to go and fix whatever the injury is, but it also tells them what type of cell to be. So that's why it's so helpful. But stem cells need a structure. They need some kind of scaffolding to actually build on. And so TB4 is not only building the scaffolding, but it's telling the stem cells, come here and be this. And that's the reason wound healing is so effective when you have TB4 involved. Igor says, everybody is different and medicine can work differently on different people and can cause different outcomes for individuals. So consult your doctor before you do any injections on your own. Yeah, Igor, I would say that that's 100% true. And, you know, that's kind of like the car seat warning of the picture of don't drive over your car seat. It's kind of like, no, duh. Like, yes, our bodies are different. Our makeup is different. And some of us respond to things better than others. It's also important to just be aware of what you're starting with and get blood tests so that you can monitor yourself. Taking a lot of your medical desire into your own hands also means being a responsible, educated person and using tools that are going to help you monitor these things, okay? And I think that all makes sense for most of us. Okay. So because TB4 is the first activated protein when it comes to cellular growth and telling stems what is needed, it's super beneficial. And I have this, again, these are too small for you guys to see, but they'll be on the blog post. Basically, it identifies how Thymosin B4 works. And this one is like the junction of how it basically starts this cell proliferation and gets stem cells to come and do what they're supposed to do. Okay, so why are we going to combine BPC157 with TB4? Researchers have shown that these two peptides can manage weight loss, promote muscle growth, and deliver anti-aging benefits. And I think you kind of understand that if you're healing your gut lining, your life is improving. And if you are getting stem cells to activate faster and heal you, there's like, you can understand that these are like the root conditions of why we feel horrible and how we age. And so when you start at that basic level, you can see systemic benefits all over. It's like a cascade of beneficial activity because your systems are becoming more efficient and more optimized. So it's found that improving blood vessels is necessary to deliver immune function to cells along with the site of injury or infection. So meaning you get more blood vessel dilation and growth, which means you get more nutrition and signaling to those wound areas. And the ability of the peptides to spread blood vessels, which are passageways, right, for, again, these critical elements that we need, helps explain why they are excellent at tissue repair. So BPC157 interacts with the body's vascular endothelial growth factors, okay, receptors, VEGFs receptors. Meanwhile, TB500 directly increases the production of these vascular endothelial growth factors. So TB500 is increasing the production of vascular endothelial growth factors, and BPC157 interacts with these vascular endothelial growth factors. That's the reason when you pair them together, they work so synergistically. And so, okay. So like I said, this is where I come back to it. Like I said before, I've been injecting it for the last 2 weeks, and I've noticed a massive improvement in my gut health from using these together because, again, there is help in vessel dilation and that mucosal lining that's getting repaired. But I believe that if the gut is your only concern, then I think taking the oral BPC157 might be super beneficial. Now, I don't know, there probably is an oral TB500 to take or a TB4 to take. I didn't look for that one yet, but I'm positive that there is an oral one. So you could always take those orally, but keep in mind, BPC157 can survive the gastric juices and get to your small intestine, while TB500 might not have the same bioavailability because most peptides break down in your gut, meaning that you really aren't going to get the signaling that you think you're getting when you take them orally. Okay, Carolyn says, hi, Kim. Have you completed your first 8 weeks of the Inflammatory? I'm wondering what you'll take for sleep after you cycle off of it. Oh, that's a great question. I know. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been using Inflammatory for almost 8 weeks. Now, I did share last week that you don't actually have to cycle off Inflammatory. Lots of people do because it's like building a tolerance to alcohol. Your first glass of wine is super impactful, but if you do that all the time, then you need 2 glasses or the bottle, right, to get the same sensation. That's the reason people cycle off, is so that it's really a money thing and a tolerance thing. It's not shutting down any receptors. It's just that your body becomes more accustomed to the Inflammatory. And people, obviously there's always a cost factor, so people cycle on and off of it. I think I will probably use Inflammatory for a full 3 months because I love it so much, and I need as much healing property as I can get as I'm trying to solve a lot of my Hashimoto's issues. So for me, getting deep sleep is the number one thing that is making me feel better. And that is due to the Inflammatory putting me to sleep 5 nights a week. I listened to this one guy who uses Inflammatory every day and doesn't cycle off. And he gave great reasoning for it. He said, look, sleep for me is critical. So even if that means I have to increase my dose or it costs money or whatever, you know, like he's like, it's not hurting me. I'm getting the benefits of being able to go to sleep and dream and get a really refreshed next day. So there's nothing wrong with using Inflammatory every day, but most people cycle because of cost and because they build a tolerance to it, which means the cost even goes up more because they're going to have to dose higher. I will tell you this. 2 weeks ago, when I dosed the CJC 1295 with the Inflammatory blend, which by the way, I'm doing as singles once my next shipment arrives. I call that my Zen dose because I did like 80 units of that blend. And you guys, it was amazing. Like, it just was so calming. It almost felt like I took some kind of narcotic, but obviously I didn't. It was hitting on all my synapses the right way, signaling this like deep relaxation. And it's amazing. So I call that my Zen dose, but I don't do it that much. I've never done it since because it's kind of wasteful. I don't think it's wasteful because I think it's really important, especially if you're a highly stressed person and you're dealing with a lot of systemic issues. I don't think dosing high and getting that really deep Zen experience is bad, but it's just costly and it uses up the product super fast. So I definitely decreased that dose, but now I know, hey, if I want to zen out one night because it's been a crazy day, I know where my dose is now. Okay. So yeah, I think that this is what I was going to say. So with my BPC157 plus the TB500, right now I had a lot of the protocols say to dose AM and PM and you break up your dose. So like if you're doing 500 mcgs, you know, your AM dose would be 250 and then your PM dose would be 250. But that is actually injury site specific. So like if I was healing from a shoulder injury, I do it AM and then I do it PM because it's going to spike the growth and the reduction in inflammation 2 times in a day. And so if you're dealing with a lot of pain, that can be really effective at controlling pain. Again, if you can control pain, then people who need to use narcotics, that will help reduce their desire to use narcotics because pain management is such a huge deal, right? And it unfortunately causes a lot of people to get addicted to opioids. Also, opioids slow down your digestive tract. So it's a cyclical problem in our society for dealing with pain management, which is why TB500 is so effective at reducing the inflammation and decreasing pain. But if you're just doing it like I am right now for specific gut health, then you can just dose that full 500 mcgs at one time. And it's always best to use peptides on an empty stomach so that no sugar or anything gets in the way of blunting or stopping that signaling on the different areas that these specific peptides hit on your cellular membrane. Okay, you guys, that's it. Does anybody have any questions? And I can like look at it, I can watch closer and answer anything for you guys. Also on the blog post, I do have like all of the sources linked of stuff that I found helpful in preparing this. So you can also go look at all that and listen to it. Most of it are videos or podcasts. Okay. Carolyn says, hi, Kim. Have you completed? Oh, sorry. So hopefully, Carolyn, I answered that for you. Oh, thank you for all you do. Okay, this is Carolyn. You had me at Microneedle several years ago. I followed you to your app and never turned away. Oh, you're amazing. Thank you. Michelle says, my apologies for missing this information other places, but could you give us an idea of how much the peptides run, including information? If it's, Michelle, that stuff is only shared inside the app. Peptides vary on cost based on where you buy from and based on the peptide, specific peptide. So for instance, sorry, does that sound okay? For instance, it's like asking, what's the cost of a jacket? It's all over the board, right? But basically, you're looking at some peptides can be like $50, other peptides can be $100, but then your protocol for use and dosing, you might go through one a week or another one might last you a month. So it really just depends on what you're using, where you're buying it from, and what your reconstitution and dosing is going to be for how long, like what the cost per use is, if that makes sense. Jean says, thanks, Ken, great walkie-talkie. Oh, you're so welcome. Thanks, Teresa. She says, you never disappoint. Okay, sounds fine. Okay, if there are any other questions, not specific to sourcing, but specific to me, my experience using things like that, I can definitely speak to that. And I'll just like wait one more second. And if not, you guys, thank you for today. I hope that if you found this helpful, you'll share it with your friends. And just know that unfortunately, this topic seems fringe. I don't think it's going to stay fringe, but there are, I feel like, some censorship concepts going on with it. So I just want to be really careful when I'm sharing about this. It needs to be always coming from my own experience and things that I'm finding online, right, from doctors or research papers to share with you guys. There are a lot of videos here on YouTube about peptides and the benefits of it. So I don't think I should be curtailed or hurt for sharing this information, but I am extremely scared all the time that me being open will hurt me. So if you enjoy this information, please share it. Please essentially help me get as large as possible before they curtail or terminate me. Like I just don't want that happening again. And I just don't know if I can survive it. Sending you a hug. Oh, thanks, Teresa. You guys are so welcome. Viola says, how far did you walk? Oh, I'm about to hit 4 miles and like I'm over a quarter. So I'm over 4.25 miles right now. All right, you guys, love you so much. And this week I'm working on the V-beam video for my face. So I'll share that with you guys on Thursday's video release. Wednesday, I'm going to get the scalp treatment and that will be next week's video. So that's kind of my plan right now. And I'll see you guys later. Thank you guys so much. All right, bye.